Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark. Today I am joined by guest Matt Kerbis. Matt, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
Today we are going to talk about Matt's novel approach to ditching hourly billing in the legal space with a subscription model and probably a few other things too. But first, Matt, could you tell folks a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Again, thanks for having me, Jonathan. And thank you for coming on my podcast. And I'm not sure exactly when that will be live, but
Cool.
I talk about this all the time. But perhaps more relevant for your audience is I'm the subscription attorney. I was sick and tired of billing time as an attorney, which is the primary way most attorneys in private practice make money. And I had to leave a law firm to start my own practice based on the subscription model so I can deliver services more affordably to clients in such a way that even I could afford my own legal services, which, a kind of a well kept secret is that most lawyers, if they really needed to, couldn't afford their own legal fees. And I did not want to have any part in that. And so I have really leaned into it. My law firm is Subscription Attorney LLC, and I target folks who have long been unserved by attorneys in Illinois anyway, where I'm licensed, and that's whether they're everyday people, solopreneurs, or small business owners.
That is great. It's that's a hilarious pull quote too. Like you couldn't afford your own services before. So,
Mhm.
okay. So the first thing that people, their minds are blown whenever they meet someone who offers a kind of high touch service like legal assistance on a subscription basis. So just dear listener, imagine if you will, how much you think Matt charges per month for access to legal services. And I'm willing to bet the number in your mind is higher than what he charges. So Matt, could you look, I want to get into pricing. So let's just do that. I also want to get into a little bit more backstory as well, but let's get into the pricing. How does it work if somebody wants to, what's the flow? So like somebody comes to your website, they hear about you and what do they encounter when they get to your website?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is unsurprisingly subscriptionattorney.com. Though I do have some other URLs that I'm interested in that may may also go to that website.
Right.
Uh, Future branding opportunities, but what they'll see is they will see three buckets, three paths that they could go on. They're either an individual looking for legal services, a freelancer. I also like to use the term solopreneur since I am
Mhm.
myself one, but on the website it's freelancer, or you're a business owner. And freelancers can be and usually are business owners, but it's usually you've got some employees, you've got higher revenue, that kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And so right there, you'll see the two subscription options depending on which category you fall into and whether or not you'd be interested in that. And so if you're just an individual or even a business owner or freelancer that wanted to test me out, it only starts at $20 a month and $50 a page. I mean, and all my pricing, unlike most lawyers, is on my website. And so it goes on from there. But my whole goal was accessibility while also still trying to be profitable. And I
Mhm.
think I've achieved that. And so the $20 a month and $50 a page sort of functions like you first must become a member of Costco before you can shop at Costco.
Yeah.
Well, all of my and Costco and Amazon Prime were big inspirations into, me designing my own model. But once you're a subscriber, even at $20 a month, you get access to well, at $20 a month, you get access to limited, but most of my flat fee services that are below market, because that's
Mhm.
one of my promises is unlike other lawyers who offer fixed fees, which many of them do these days, some criminal defense attorneys, some estate planning attorneys, some other areas are offering fixed fees. But for any of those instances, like with real estate, I try to offer below market flat fees for being a subscriber.
Mhm.
And if there's not a market per se for that type of fixed fee, and I may use fixed fee and flat fee interchangeably, they're the same thing in the
Yep.
legal industry. Then I will just I will default to the $50 a page fee, which I stop counting for the higher level subscribers, such as the freelancer or business levels. They become per project basis where we don't count pages. It could be one page, it could be 100 pages. That's one project. I've yet to see a project that's 100 pages, Jonathan, and we could
Mhm.
get into scoping problems and such if you
Mhm.
want to get into it. That's one of the values to get them up the subscription level and up that chain is we stop counting pages and we just count projects.
Cool. Okay, great. So let's do switch into scoping because that is when the prices that you're sharing here are shockingly low, especially to someone who thinks like, oh, well, what if they have you on a Zoom call every day for 2 hours? So how do you handle the scoping, because even at the different tiers, it still feels, not to me, but I mean, I'm sure there are people listening who it feels like a vulnerable position. If they were going to copy you, it feels like putting themselves in a vulnerable position. So how do you actually address that, or how do you address those fears?
Well, you're absolutely right, and unsurprisingly, your instincts are spot on. And I think that that's a good thing that I am in the vulnerable position because I think that increases the likelihood that my client feels they're getting a lot of value for what they're paying, and
Hmm.
increases the likelihood that they stay subscribed, increasing my lifetime value and decreasing the likelihood of churn.
Yeah.
And so it's all about how you put up guardrails around that monthly price and the subscriber benefits, right? And so for the $20 a month subscribers, we're looking at a limited time of my day during the weekday. And when I first got started, I had weekend hours, but those have gone away.
Hmm.
People were mostly not using it anyway. Of scheduled 15-minute calls at the end of my day during the week. And that's it. And that's what they get access to as one of those things. And then they get access to the $50 a page pricing, the below market flat fee pricing, right? So they're not going to be on the phone with me for more than 15 minutes at a time.
Hmm.
And as much as this is an incredible value, people don't like talking to their lawyer. I mean, I think they like talking to me, but like they don't like they have better things to do in their life.
Yeah.
One of my pitches is like get back to what you enjoy in your life or your business.
Right.
Um, and so if they're talking to me for 2 hours, I'm not doing a very good job at my job. And
Hmm.
so they don't do that. And look, every industry is different, right? But then like going up, so how I scope it for the different pricing is basically then if you're at $99 a month or higher, you get access to my whole calendar of availability. So
Hmm.
that's one of the reasons why I charge more is you get significantly more access to my time, but it's only 15 minutes at a time for all of those levels. Now, the way I schedule, and I'm using Calendly is like my number one tool for
Hmm.
all of this, and a lot of the automations and things built in the back and that are all no code. So I will oftentimes, and one of those things I do is I buffer in, depending on the scheduling link, 15 or 30 minutes after our quote unquote scheduled time, because I then could be magnanimous and I
Hmm.
could say, well, I've got some more time if you've got some more time. And so that's increasing my client happiness. And also if like even my $20 a month subscribers, if we have, if they've hired me for an estate plan or a prenup or a real estate closing, we may need more than 15 minutes on the phone. Well,
Hmm.
I will send them a 30 or 45-minute or an hour long link along with documents and such
Hmm.
that we can get on the calendar outside of that end of day time frame because
Hmm.
they are paying me a significant, I mean, I still think affordable, but they're paying me hundreds or maybe close to $1,000. I have few things that are more than $1,000 for my flat fees.
Hmm.
So I'm happy to spend some extra time with them because realistically, I'm using automation, I'm using Gen AI, I'm using document databases paired with automation. I'm not drafting anything from scratch.
Hmm.
So I'm happy to spend some extra time with them to go over a document.
Cool. Okay. So it's a combination of limited access to availability, small chunks of time that are available to be booked, and and automation. So decrease cost of delivery. So let's talk about automation a little bit. You sound pretty technical. Are you pretty technical, or is it something you just sort of taught yourself on the job?
I am as technical as one can get with a philosophy degree, Jonathan.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to code. Everything I do is no code. Um, I'm sure I could play around with the, GPT 4.0 and doing some coding, by prompting accordingly. But
Mhm.
I have gotten far enough without having to do that, that I'm comfortable delivering, the services, doing the technical stuff the way I can without having to do that.
Mhm.
And there are so many resources these days for these tech tools because lawyers are historically really bad at adopting technology, and part of that is the training of it. They need to be trained on how to do things properly. Well, I would, I most things are a subscription. Most tools that you may use as an attorney are subscription software products.
Mhm.
And they want you to stay subscribed. And so they provide a wealth of information in their knowledge base or on YouTube or their own videos on how to succeed at using their technology. And so I just teach myself using those tools,
Yeah.
using those resources to learn how to use the tools. And lawyers were really good at learning. You just have to put in a little bit of time to do it. And when you're not billing your time, it's easier to find the time to do that.
Well, do you think it's an incentive thing as well? Like, why learn how to get faster if someone's billing themselves out by the hour, or is that am I just imagining that?
No, not imagining it. And that's another reason why lawyers don't spend a lot of time doing non-billable things if it could be avoided, even if it's going to increase revenue, like business development. It's like,
Mhm.
well, I can't go to that networking event. That's going to take 3 hours, including the commute and follow up and everything. That's $1,500 if I'm billing $500 an hour. You know, I like to explain more recently, actually, like as I become more mature in understanding the subscription economy and how to convince lawyers to stop thinking time equals money and
Mhm.
start thinking less time equals more money, which is the complete inverse.
Yeah.
Um, and tell them, like, if you really want to think about time equals money, and I try to exaggerate to drive home the point, the time you spend with family and the time you spend doing business development or things that will increase your productivity, instead of it being your billable rate, make it 1,000 times your billable rate, because that's what it's worth, really, if you really want to assign money to time.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. Someone should write a book about it. So let's talk about capacity. So if you, how many people can you handle at these different tiers, or do you even
It's
worry about that?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I'm 2.5 years into this experiment, and it really is an experiment, right? Because if I was taking a purely what's best for my business approach, I would not have 3 buckets. I would have 1 bucket, right?
Hmm.
It would be I'm the lawyer for everyday people for their everyday legal needs, or I'm the solopreneur's lawyer, or I'm the fractional GC for mom and pop and brick and mortars in
Hmm.
Illinois.
Yep.
Like I would just pick one. But I didn't know which one was going to be the most profitable, which one would be easiest. And you have to also appreciate the context. And this sort of goes back to your initial question about the pricing. The context of the legal industry and legal services are we have a monopoly on legal services. You have to be a licensed attorney to give legal advice and provide legal services. Otherwise, you're engaged in unlicensed practice of law. And I do have to tell my clients sometimes just because I'm explaining this to you doesn't mean you can go and tell your friends and family because you're putting yourself at risk of unlicensed practice of law. And there are rules around that. And there are civil and criminal penalties. So don't do that. Um, there's a little bit of useful legal information for the listeners as well
Yeah.
as they work with legal counsel. Is and But the
Just,
reason why folks even want to do that
mhm.
is because lawyers are so expensive. They
Yeah.
charge high billable hour rates. People do not hire lawyers unless they have no other choice. And so, like, I am coming from this of at the angle of like, let's provide more accessible and affordable access to legal advice, whether that's me or some of the people I inspire through my podcast, Law Subscribed. And that is primarily targeted at an attorney audience to ditch the billable hour and use subscriptions. So, like, that's where I'm coming at this from.
Mhm.
And so I even though I found that it's far easier and I make much more revenue and I'm still having an impact with small business owners that would have gotten in a lot of legal trouble. Like, I should probably, as a business owner, just focus on the fractional general counsel work that I do for businesses.
Mhm.
And if I did, you know, I would need, 10 to 20 clients and I'd be done.
Mm. Yep.
Like if I really wanted to. Like right now, I have a handful. I just actually today got somebody signed up for personal things that they told me they were going to sign up with me after we're done with all that to be their business counsel,
Mm.
my one of my business counsel subscription levels. So I look forward to doing that, and I'm able to, for people who wholly own their businesses, I could do that.
Mhm.
Because they're wholly owned, there's less of a conflict. There still has to be a little bit of a explanation given of, representing you is different than representing your business, and I have to, do the best thing for your business is not always the best thing for you, but if they own it 100%, it usually is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so like I think that might be like, I mean, I'm not actually looking at my numbers here, but I'm at like 5, I'm soon to be at like 5 business subscribers at different levels. And I will say the prices on my websites, they could sign up right for my website at those levels. I do custom pricing
Mhm.
because not everybody needs 10 projects a month or 15 projects a month and all the other subscriber benefits that come with it. So if my clients ask me to, or I learn, like, I don't want them to overpay.
Yeah.
I mean, especially I don't want them to underpay, but I don't want them to overpay because then they're not going to stay subscribed, and I want them to stay subscribed. So if for my business counsel, it's 2,500 a month or 5,000 a month, depending on their business needs,
Mhm.
and I've got one person subscribed at one of those levels,
Mhm.
and my other business subscribers that I do have custom levels in between that, and one even a little bit lower. Because at the end of the day, I want my clients to be happy and actually, I could customly as a solo, I could properly scope those
Mhm.
subscriber benefits. Um, but then I got another handful of freelancer, clients that I represent, and they actually, they're really good clients for me, in Illinois, 'cause again, I'm only licensed in Illinois.
Mhm.
They're really good clients for me in that we have a lot in common, but I do find that they are also more likely to unsubscribe, resubscribe, unsubscribe,
Yeah,
resubscribe,
I was gonna
which
ask
is
about that.
fine.
Yeah.
I'm happy to have boomerang clients,
Yep.
and what I found is, I mean, as a service provider at the end of the day, I try to productize my services, but it's still, I'm a service provider.
Mhm.
Even when my clients are unsubscribed, I find they still think of me as their lawyer. So when something else comes up, who are they going to go to? They're going to come to me because I make the offboarding process self-service and the onboarding process self-service.
Mhm.
And so I've had plenty of boomerang clients, and they're mostly going to be at that level, is what I found at the
Yep.
freelancer level. And then for individuals, I have the majority, I have dozens of individuals signed up, and they use me here and there, and they're not paying a lot, and they feel like they're getting great value. And so, like, I could, if I just focused on that market, it'd be massive volume. Where would so it's hard to tell you exactly, where would I be at my capacity without
Mhm.
hiring.
Right.
But I am in the process of hiring my first legal extern, so a law student who will get course credit for working for me, and
Mm.
over time, if I find that position, and I'll have a new one every semester and one during the summer is the plan, and if I find that they're actually helping me generate more value for my clients that stay subscribed and I'm getting more subscribers, I will also, some law schools allow pay and credit, so I fully intend to, um, offer some pay for that as well in the future. So I'm already planning to bring in some help, to get the
Hmm.
work done.
Interesting. What's at the normal individual level, like sort of personal legal, what are the kinds of things that people what are the common things that they bring to you?
I have gotten most of my clients at that level, believe it or not, when they need a prenup. In
Hmm.
Illinois, we call them premarital agreements. So think about it just from like a percentage standpoint, right? Like how many couples get divorced in the US? Like about half, right?
Hmm.
Well, they're going to have kids. A percentage of them are going to have kids, and those kids are going to grow up and get married. Well, they've been through that and they don't want to go through that again. You might think people who want prenups, one of them has a lot of money.
Hmm.
Well, that is still sometimes true, and I've represented both sides of that. But most folks that are getting married and want a prenup just don't want to have to go through what they saw their parents go through.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
a lot of same-sex couples who have, they both have their own jobs,
Hmm.
and are totally successful on their own, and they just wanna make sure what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine, and only things we put together in joint accounts are things that, are gonna be ours together, and you just need to paper that,
Hmm.
you need to make that legally binding.
Yep.
And so it's not complicated. These are not complicated things to do, and then one or two of them might wanna start their own business.
Yep.
And so I'll help them incorporate as a single member LLC, give them an operating agreement and strategic legal advice that most lawyers won't give that might actually help them with business. Cause I'm a solopreneur
Hmm.
and I've been down that road personally as well. And I have other clients who've done it. So I try to provide more context than just the legal stuff that might help them succeed in their business, which I'm incentivized to do since they're subscribed to me.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
How do you
you
add
know,
value? It's the dynamic is so wild once you feel it, once you switch and the notion churn is such a funny it's funny that most service providers never think about churn. It's like everything. Nobody ever they're just constantly churned. Everybody's churned. It's like they hire you by the hour and then churn. It's like it's such a flip mentally when you're in a situation, a subscription situation. Most of my listeners will be familiar with it from the SaaS space because they're mostly software developers or designers that use SaaS businesses, and they know I assume everyone knows what it means to churn. It's like that's the name a subscription seller would use when someone cancels their subscription. So you cancel Netflix or you cancel whatever, I don't know, your Adobe products, Creative Cloud. And when, as a service provider, the notion of worrying about churn is so foreign, but it's great. Like once you experience the, I don't want to call it the fear of churn, but like your enemy is churn. So like, how do you deal with churn? It's like by delighting your clients. It's the best. It's so cool because then your brain is always thinking of like, how could I better serve these clients so they don't churn? And uh, I don't know. It's just such a wild dynamic that the vast majority of people are not exposed to. Uh, I wish more people were. I guess that's kind of your mission too, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm on like your mission is phenomenal, and I'm just trying to do it just for the legal profession, Jonathan.
Mm.
That's it. I'm trying to help all lawyers ditch the billable hour. That's it.
Do you think that there are sort of branches of legal space where a subscription model would be too dangerous, too risky?
I think there are some spaces where a pure subscription model would be too risky, right? And like my higher level subscribers are pure subscription. But it's nice to have this like a la carte pricing. Like for example, if somebody has 10 projects a month, they go over the 10 projects. Well, they know it's $50 a page, right? So like that's pretty easy. And then if they're a good client, going back to this like conversation we were just having about churn, if they're a good client and I want them to stay subscribed, whatever, it's one extra project. I'm magnanimous again, and the likelihood they stay subscribed is high. And I was only going to make $50 a page anyway on that thing, so it's not going to make or break my business. Even with the pure subscription, I like the flexibility to have this other sort of flat fee pricing available depending on the circumstance. So I don't, I guess you could even say like I don't have technically only pure subscription since that's available. But like if you're in litigation, for example, pure subscription, unless it's like a high volume thing that you know exactly, like every case is very similar, like debt collection, foreclosure prosecution on the plaintiff side, like those types of things. Yeah, maybe a pure subscription would be okay. But in most litigation, it's probably not going to be okay. But you know what is a subscription and flat fee hybrid. You could still find a way to ditch the billable hour by doing a hybrid alternative fee-based pricing and make it work and still be profitable in the big picture. Another problem lawyers have is they look at things at a matter by matter or case by case basis. Well, I would have lost money on that case. Well, okay, well if most cases took you half the amount of work that they used to, you're still way in the black. Like way in the black, right?
Yeah, I get this from software developers all the time where they imagine because it's becoming more popular to have all you can eat software or design services, like development services or design services,
Mhm.
and people will, before they try it, they'll obsess over someone, hogging all the food at the buffet, stuffing their pockets full of shrimp and just sort of overusing the service. And it's like, well, that might happen, but it's probably only going to be, I mean, 1 out of 10 is going to be a hog. And even if they are, the other nine aren't. So it's probably not that big a deal. And never mind the fact that there are ways to deal with that kind of behavior. Like you described some of the scoping stuff earlier. You can prevent that, or at least encourage them to not overuse the service, or you can let them go and have them go with someone else. But it's the idea of wanting each individual client to always be profitable. Every transaction, you want it to be profitable. It's like the wrong way to look at it. You need to look at the overall, Ron Baker calls it your portfolio of clients,
Mhm.
and you want the overall thing to be profitable, of course, or you're going to be in trouble. But it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be that everyone's low maintenance. It's okay if someone's high maintenance once in a while, or maybe one of the clients is high maintenance a lot, but you've got some reason to stick with them. It's just the wrong way to look at it in a
I
case
you
by
know,
case basis.
yeah, and I think you'll probably agree with this or some version of this. Now, just because I'm targeting a blue ocean and a latent legal market, there are, attorneys that I talk with that want to do it for premium clients in the red ocean and the typical sorts of existing clients for lawyers. And you could do premium pricing. And so what I would do in that sort of a circumstance, or what I would recommend in the legal space is when you price your subscription, price it for that most expensive, time sucking client.
Right. Yeah.
That's what you do. And maybe not all the way there if you want, depending on your market and, how you think people would sign up based at that level, and that high subscription. But if you price it close to or at that person who sucks your time up all the time or takes all the energy, and then you're really winning every time. If you only get that client 1 out of every 10 clients,
Right.
that's a major win.
Yeah. Well, so, okay. So that leads us to sort of what is the client experience? So it sounds like it's true that your model is pretty rare still in the legal space. Is that fair to say?
As far as I could tell, my model specifically is one of a kind.
Okay. I know some. I've interviewed other folks on this show and talked to others where they'll have like flat fees for things, but I don't think I've interviewed anybody who has a lawyer who has a subscription model. So how much kind of educating the client do you need to do before they're comfortable clicking the buy now button? I mean, do they immediately get the idea, or is it like so foreign that they are skeptical or something?
Yeah, and also just one clarifying point on the last thing I said is my business model is wholly unique, but there are a lot of I can't have a podcast dedicated to it. If there weren't
Yeah.
dozens, probably hundreds of attorneys using the subscription model in some way,
Mhm.
right? They're just not using it the way I'm using it. That's
Yep.
all.
Yep.
And mostly because the riches are in the niches, and so it's like provider legal. They service on a subscription small medical and dental providers. You know, there's a sports lawyer that he just represents athletes on the bench to help them start sports camps and stuff. There's a lawyer who's the food lawyer, and he just helps like companies along the agricultural chain in the U.S. and
Uh,
that's all he does. So like there are a lot of examples. They're just not attorneys doing it as like a, and there are a lot of fractional GCs who are serving businesses.
mm,
They're targeting more red ocean clients than blue ocean clients, right?
mhm.
Um, so, so there's a lot of them doing that. But what it looks like is like just literally today, this client who it was like 2 or 3 months between the last time I talked to him that he signed up, and I could I can't talk about specifics of what we said or who this client is, but I could talk in broad scope, right? So, I had to explain like how you actually sign up is you go to the website, which by the way, I could text him the link and I did to just do it from his phone.
Yeah.
And from a technical side, I use SweetDash, integrated with Stripe primarily to power like most of the client portal and automation of invoices and charging and all that.
Mhm.
And so, I've set all these up. Like I spent many a weekend before I launched setting up all these automations, and I've updated them over the last 2.5 years. And I did explain, and this is the downside to no code solutions, is you know, there is a little glitch that I've had some clients run into where after you click submit or after you click sign, because there's like a digital signature I make you do, you also have to click submit.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so, like, I like, explained that on the phone because he was like, "Okay, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to sign up. Like, okay, all the things are aligned now. I'm ready to sign up." So I said, "And feel free to give me a call back because I always have that buffer time,
Mhm.
in between calls and all that." I was like, "If you run into any issues, call me back." But he was able to figure it out. And also, I find I have to explain whether over the phone or in an email, a follow-up email,
Mhm.
because most of my clients, like I've had like in 2.5 years, I've had 3 clients sign up directly from the website. I make it really easy to schedule a no legal advice 15-minute introductory call with me, and almost always after that call, my client is signing up.
Mhm.
Um, I wish I could automate that a little bit more, but at the end of the day, even at $20 a month, people still want to know the lawyer they're going to be working with.
Right.
And I didn't do that at first. That was one of my big lessons from my first like 6 months of having a business is to make it really easy for people to schedule a quick call with you. So I do. And so I also tell them you'll get an email, and just like with a doctor's office or setting up another online account, you have to confirm your account and set up a password.
Mhm.
And once you do that, as soon as you set up your password, you'll be shown your invoice. And once you pay that, that will be set up the recurring whatever a month fee.
Mhm. Okay.
And then I invoice them for separate things in the client portal that are these flat fee things. And I have just a drop down menu that I click and it automatically goes out. And then they message me in the client portal, just like you do with your doctor, because I need to preserve attorney-client privilege, and if you text or email with your attorney, arguably that's not preserved by attorney-client privilege. So,
Mhm.
like, if you're just trying to get in touch with me for a quick thing that's not legal advice, yeah, email or text is fine. But if you really need something like legal advice, protected information that we are ensuring is preserved,
Right.
that's got to go through the client portal, whether that's documents that we're sharing or, or any other sort of written advice that I might give. So that all goes through the client portal. And then, look, it's not I'm not in love with Sweet Dash in terms of like its interface
Mhm.
and the amount I'm able to customize it without coding. I know if there's some low code options, I just don't use those, and it might be able to be better. But for me, at the price point, it's like a no-brainer to still use and be profitable, and it's my MVP, my minimum viable portal.
Right.
So then we just interface through the portal. The links to schedule calls with me are all in the portal. Invoicing is through the portal. Sharing documents is through the portal. Um, and that's how everything is through the portal at that point.
Do you do anything that is sort of a member benefit across all of your clients, or at least a cohort of clients? For example, because it's almost it's a little bit that when you're talking about the portal, it's like, it's almost like a membership community, but nobody knows each other. And I was, just curious if that's it's weird because it's legal, so maybe this would be a bad idea in this particular space. But like, if you knew that you had a whole bunch of, you've got a bunch of freelancers or whatever, and you're gonna bring in Seth Godin to do like a subscriber presentation or something like that. Like, is that, or is it more like you're all of that kind of stuff you just do on the podcast for the general public?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I am not doing anything like that. I could, right? And one of my subscriber benefits is a growing knowledge base, which has been growing very slowly because I have a bunch of clients and I'm doing a bunch of work and I'm doing biz dev and I'm doing a lot of other things, right? So, so I definitely could do more things like that, but it would still have to be kept private from each other. And the reason why is because even the fact that somebody has hired me as their attorney is arguably protected by attorney-client
Yeah.
privilege until it's not. Like, until I call somebody or send them a letter on their behalf or something like that, right? Or, at the other side of the negotiation table, there's another attorney and now it's out there that, I'm their attorney. But
Right.
I have quite a few clients, and in particular, this is 100% true in the solopreneur space of clients that I have, is they don't want the other people to know
Hmm.
that they have an attorney.
Right.
Um, and 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 I even have I unbundle negotiations from my subscription packages unless you're a business client, because I know my freelancers were part of the reason I could offer such low monthly pricing for them is that's assuming I'm not negotiating on their behalf because they don't want me to. I'm a ghostwriter for them.
Hmm. Yeah.
So so I wish I could do more membership economy style strategies
Hmm.
to increase value and retention. Unfortunately, in light of my profession,
Yeah.
I can't. There are some lawyers, like the Counsel for Creator guys. Um, they they do some version of this, but I can't remember if it's like actually their law firm or if it's like a separate legal entity.
Right.
And then they give a discount on flat fee services to their subscribers of this membership group,
Hmm.
right? So they might, and then there's another one, Jim Hart, who also has some group. Although I think he recently it was separate, and he just brought them all into his law firm. And I should mention both those practices are primarily trademarks, and brand strategy and stuff.
Got it.
So that's a federal practice because trademarks is federal law. There are state laws around trademarks, but usually you want federal protection.
Mhm.
So since they have a federal practice, they could do that from anywhere for anyone who's seeking trademarks or that kind of advice in the United States. I'm a state-based practice, and so I can't do that
Mhm.
kind of a thing. Um, and
Okay.
that's a whole other podcast, Jonathan. So we don't have to go into that.
Sure, sure. So rewind the clock, maybe I think you said it was 2.5 years ago when you were working weekends to get this stuff set up. When you launched, how long did it take you before yeah, how long did it take you to get traction? Was it a slog, or like what was that period like? Did you have to still do hourly for legacy clients and you were kind of spinning up this new thing, or did like right away you got a couple of, high tier subscription people that were gonna keep your lights on?
Oh, that's a really good question. And look, I've been talking about it through my podcast and other advocacy for years leading up to the launch of my practice.
Mm.
And my firm was very supportive of the subscription model inside the practice. After the pandemic happened and we didn't have any billable hours anymore, at least for a time.
Mm.
And as long as I got my other billable hour requirements met, right? So it was never going to happen. But so because of that, I had gotten a lot of recognition and I had got a lot of feedback from folks that this is a great idea. And I had two clients when I launched from my other practice,
Mhm.
And they could not be happier to start paying me a monthly subscription to take care of their stuff for them, right? And so I thought like, well, this is gonna be great. Like, I'm gonna sign up a bunch of people right away.
Mhm.
Except it's hard to market a business that doesn't exist yet, that hasn't launched yet while you're still working for another business.
Yeah.
In particular in the legal space where there's like professional rules and like a code of conduct and ethics that I have to follow.
Right.
Um, and so like the first year was rough,
Yeah.
building up that flywheel, right? But now I'm 2.5 years in, and lawyers are I'm like the podcast is for lawyers, and it doesn't actually directly bring in business into my firm. It really started as a passion project, and it's got a couple of sponsors, so it's not like it makes no money, but it's not. I'm never going to be a full time legal coach, like lawyer coach,
Right.
right? Um, and but there are lawyers who have heard about me from the podcast, or lawyers who talk to lawyers who've heard about my podcast and what I do, who have sent clients to me from like other jurisdictions, but they're transacting in Illinois.
Mhm.
And so like building a flywheel just takes time. And
Yeah.
like I have boomerang clients, and like there's unless you're willing to spend a lot of money, which I was not because this is bootstrapped. I've got student loans, I've got a mortgage, I've got a car payment,
Yeah.
I've got childcare expenses. Like I did not wanna take on look, my wife works full time and at a corporate gig, and we are on her benefits, so I had a little bit of a parachute there, but we did need an income for me to sustain our lifestyle.
Mhm.
Like, that was a must. So I still had the motivation, like, this needs to succeed. And that first year, I made barely more than I needed to, like, make sure, like, ends were met without going into any savings. So, like, thankfully, like, I didn't burn any savings starting this venture, because I'm a virtual law firm and my overhead's extremely low,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But, like, that first year, like, it was, like, not including a little bit of advertising I tried out, and then I will never do that
Yeah.
again, because what I do is so different, right? And I'm competing with lawyers who are spending millions of dollars on advertising and pay-per-click and all that,
Mhm.
right? I spent $5,000 my first year. Like, that's it,
Yeah. In total.
And right now, like, my estimated expenses for 2024, that are not paying myself, just the operation expenses,
Right.
is a little more than $7,300.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not advertising, I'm not marketing. I'm doing more traditional business development things, um, that are working. And even though I'm a virtual law firm that could practice anywhere in Illinois, I I still find most of my clients are local to me.
Yep.
They know someone who knows me, or I volunteer a lot in my community, in part because I want my child to grow up in a really good community and I want to make it better, but also because I do that, people in the community are hiring me and
Right.
they're telling people about it. So like building the flywheel took time. This year, like in my third year of operations, I will cross what I was making at the last firm.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about what I would expect because of the flywheel thing. It is difficult to get it started, but once it's flying, once it's spinning, then it's like kind of hard to stop it. So,
Yeah, and to be fair, like, I think I could probably charge twice what I'm charging, and it'd still be affordable, and I would have been profitable faster.
right.
And there are some people who don't hire me because they don't want bargain bin attorney. They don't want the Target lawyer, the Walmart lawyer, and you know what? That's fine. There's plenty of lawyers who will charge you a premium for very similar services to me.
Mhm. Yeah. Speaking of competition, who really is your competition? Is it an hour, $300 an hour lawyer, or is it like LegalZoom?
I don't really have competition because the space that I'm playing in are people who either don't want to because they need to know what it's gonna cost them before they pay for something,
Mhm.
or can't afford to hire a billable hour attorney. I when I'm talking to lawyers, I will say, like, I'm fractional general counsel.
Mhm.
So in the same way that, like, and they immediately know what that means, but like, Google has the largest law firm because they have a massive in-house legal team that they exclusively work for Google. Google's their only client.
Mhm.
Well, most small business owners don't have that kind of a ongoing need, right? So I'm their fractional general counsel, their fractional in-house attorney.
Mhm.
And in-house attorneys are generalists. I mean, if you're at Google, you're in their IP department, or so not necessarily. Google's not a great example of that, but like for other businesses where there's like just a small legal team, they're generalists. So I'm a generalist. I do mile wide, inches deep law.
Mhm.
So I don't really compete with other lawyers because no one else is in that space, because they heard 20 years ago there's riches in the niches and they all highly specialized.
Mhm.
But what did that do? That opened up market opportunity for my kind of a practice. But
Mhm.
just like in-house attorneys will hire specialized outside counsel for specialized legal matters, I'm actually not in competition with other lawyers. They are my partners, not
Mhm.
legally,
Yeah.
but like I am referring business to them and they could refer business to me when they're too expensive.
Right.
And so some of my greatest opportunities are with other lawyers.
Hmm.
Now they don't all see it that way at first,
Yeah.
but it's true. And like I do simple estate planning is another thing that I do, which usually follows immediately after the prenup, and then I help the couple buy a house.
Hmm.
That's usually what that looks like.
Yep.
But like my simple estate planning is truly for simple estates. And if somebody's just getting married, they've got a simple estate.
Right.
Like if somebody's got a bunch of properties, they need land trusts, they have a special needs child, or they want a special trust for their pet. Like I'm not the right lawyer for that.
Right.
I know plenty of lawyers that are.
Yep. Yeah, it's like my doctor. I have a concierge doctor, and he's a generalist GP or whatever. And if I, need physical therapy for my shoulder or something, he sends me to someone who he's like give me all the paperwork. They deal with all the stuff, but and I'd go over there and have to pay for that as a separate thing. But 99 times out of 100, I don't need a specialist, so the generalist is just fine.
Right. And it's problem avoidance, Jonathan. And I don't know how much this will resonate with your audience, but selling problem avoidance is harder than selling problem
Yeah,
solving.
yeah, quite a bit. Yep. The thing that it's kind of like you said, if they were the children of divorce, like they've witnessed how bad it can get. It's like in the software space, a lot of times people who sell sort of application architecture or higher level strategic or design things, they're way upstream. The buyers for those things have been horribly burned in the past by not, by building the house without a blueprint. They're like,
Hmm.
oh, we don't need a
Yeah.
blueprint. We'll just start banging nails, metaphorically speaking. And the other way that I've seen, just for people listening, the other way that you can sell problem avoidance, or the way that like you see insurance companies do it all the time,
Hmm.
is you can convince someone to buy problem avoidance for a loved one more easily than for themselves, because it's never going to happen to me. Like I'm never going to need that insurance, but my kid has got their first apartment or whatever. That's a terrible example, but or my kid's starting their first business, or I don't know. I can't come up with an example, but the idea of buying it for your loved one, estate planning, it's like you don't want to saddle your kids with this burden or whatever. And so that's really the main way I've seen kind of like in a direct mail approach for risk avoidance, problem avoidance type stuff. Is It's like the buyer is buying it for someone else, like a loved one, not so much for themselves. But anyway,
That
long tangent.
that is, Jonathan, thank you so much for having me on your podcast because that's a major takeaway
Okay.
for me. And I will say it's a huge light bulb moment, first of all, because my father is in sales in the insurance business, and, I did get a good line from him, which is Kerbis service. So at least I got that. That's a good, family thing to pass down. But, so I'm always thinking about, like, the insurance industry and whatnot. And sometimes people have said what I do is kind of like insurance. It's not legal insurance. It's different. You're actually hiring an attorney. You're
Mhm.
you're engaging with a law firm, right? So it's different than insurance because it's subscriber benefits that you maximize or don't every month. Um, but like your insight into that, I think is really important of why people buy insurance. And it's not just for problem avoidance. It's like you said, my, I have life insurance, and it's not just because my dad's a
Yeah.
life and health insurance producer. Um, it's because I want my wife to be taken care of if anything were to happen to me and my child to
Right.
have some money.
Yep.
So you're absolutely right. In the legal space, I cannot do direct solicitation for random people. It's prohibited. You could do broad marketing, like that's why you see lawyer billboards everywhere, right?
Right.
But you can't do targeted marketing unless you know the people. So that's why sometimes lawyers join like these networking groups that you pay for, because then they could go through all of them and their networks and stuff.
Hmm.
Because it's not cold outreach, but we are prohibited from doing cold outreach, as though that somehow, it's not at the level that behooves us lawyers to lower ourselves to, or something like that. Who knows, man?
Well, yeah, that's if all cold outreach was banned, I would be a happier person. So I suppose maybe it's something that other pseudo professions could emulate at some point. Cool. Well, this has been super interesting. Is there anything you want to leave the listener with? So imagine the listener does a high touch service, probably not a lawyer, but maybe there's some lawyers listen. What would you leave them with in terms of next steps if they wanted to kind of experiment with subscription? Like, can you even experiment with it? Or do you have to go, all in, burn the boats style? What would you say to someone who's curious?
So that's a really good question. It makes me think about my interview with Robbie Kalman Baxter, um, who I'm sure your listeners are probably familiar with her work.
I don't
Author.
know that name.
Oh, really? My episode 33 of the Law Subscribed podcast.
Yeah.
Which one of the things she said on that episode, she's the first consultant with Netflix. She's wrote The Membership Economy and The Forever Promise, or The Forever Transaction are the books. So she said, start narrow and go broad. So basically the exact opposite of what I did. She also said, although she's come around on this as Netflix has changed their pricing structure with letting advertisers come in, although
Mhm.
I still think it follows her philosophy of start narrow and then go broad, is it's hard to have multiple business models at the same time.
Yeah.
So to the extent that you are, you know, you're billing time and you want to switch to hourly, or you want to switch to flat fee or to subscription, like it's going to be hard. Another guest of my podcast and a lawyer, Jess Birkin, what she did is when she went to subscription, she was like, whatever new client, she was like, here's option A, here's option B. One is our billable hour. And like, here we're explaining it. It's basically, this is what we bill you per hour whenever you need us. And like, here's the subscription and here's the package and here's what it gets you and all these benefits and everything. And after doing that for a year, nobody signed up for the billable hour. And
Oh, really?
so she
That's
stopped offering it.
oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, so that's a way that you can, if you just want to dip your toe, go into it. I find that it's always easier to burn the boats. Like in particular, if you're like a software developer at a bigger company, well, what's the way to burn the boat? You start your own company, you become an entrepreneur, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the way to do it. And to the extent your implied or express employment contract with them allows you to do that and still own all your IP, it's going to be easier to do it, to side hustle, right? But a lot of legal considerations in side hustling. And so definitely
Yeah.
talk to a lawyer about that. You don't want, your company to own everything that you create, on the side. I can't say any more about that without potentially giving legal advice. So,
Yeah.
a lot of things to consider there. Something that I like to do, I do a lot of teaching on this outside of my podcast. We call them continuing legal education, call it continuing legal education.
Mhm.
In the legal industry, we have to do so many hours every 2 years or so to maintain our law license.
Yep.
And at the end of all of them now that I do, I say, here's a thought experiment. Imagine that the billable hour is banned in a year from now. Like it's been promulgated. Like there's a new rule. No more billable hours allowed. You have
Yep.
365 days. I mean, sometimes you want 3 months, you know, to figure out a solution. Go,
Mhm.
right? Like that's the way, like engage in that, some version of that thought experiment and keep yourself to it. And you'd be amazed at what you come up with.
Yeah. Sure. Another classic one is like if you had to 10x your business, well, how would you do it? Because you can't do it with hourly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hourly is, I mean, it's been said a million times on this podcast and others, right? Like, it's an artificial cap on how much money you can make. Who would
Mhm.
want it? Why would you do that?
Yeah. Right. Well, this is great. So where should people go to find out more about what you're doing? Maybe subscribe to your podcast?
Yeah. So if you're a lawyer and you want to learn more, or if you're a developer and you're thinking about getting into the legal tech space, because I also interview a lot of legal tech founders and co-founders on my podcast who are providing the technology that help lawyers ditch the billable hour,
Cool.
then it's www.lawsubscribed.com. And the only reason I have that www is it's powered through Substack, and so they require a subdomain.
Yeah.
I hate
See, you're
that.
pretty technical.
Yeah, well, a little bit, a little bit. I hate that www thing. Like, whatever. For folks like I also do a podcasting for lawyers course, and I tell the lawyers like if they already have their firmname.com that they could use Substack, and it could be podcast or media.firmname.com, through
Yep.
Substack. Which I get why Substack does it. Anyway, www.lawsubscribe.com is the podcast. That's where I talk about this, and where you'll be coming up in an upcoming episode as well.
Cool.
The law firm is subscriptionattorney.com. Happy to have a free 15-minute conversation about if somebody needs to hire, is interested in hiring me, but I can only help you if you're transacting or domiciled or you're headquartered in Illinois.
Mhm.
And then LinkedIn's the best way to reach out to me. You can search the subscription attorney there. MathewKerbis.com. Mathew with one T is my speaker portfolio. So when this goes live, this will be posted there along with all other past speaking engagements I've given. And I recently started a new project called the Law for Kids podcast. It's Law for Kids podcast,
Yeah.
www.lawforkidspodcast.com. and at LFK Pod on all socials. And it's just, I'm trying to teach kids and really anyone who wants to learn about all the things I had to pay $150,000 to go to law school for that we should probably learn just as citizens of the US about
Mm,
broad legal topics. And look, that's a marketing play, but it's also just trying to build goodwill. Like I don't put my firm name in anything with all that, but as a small business owner, we got to get the word out there. And it's
yeah.
if you're just doing genuinely something good, the likelihood that folks are going to share it is going to increase. So that's a new project that I'm working on.
Cool. Love it. All right, great. Well, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, that's it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark. I hope you join me again next time for Ditching Hourly. Bye.